Story 1. The highway exit that didn't exist on the way back. This happened to me in 2017 during a cross-country road trip with two of my closest friends. We'd all just graduated college and figured we'd take a few weeks to explore the back roads of the American Southwest before life really started. Our route wasn't fixed. We had a rough loop planned, out through Texas, up into Colorado, and back down through Arizona. Mostly back roads, less traffic, more atmosphere. Or that's how we sold it to ourselves. Somewhere near the border of New Mexico and Arizona, we stopped at a diner we hadn't seen on the map. We were tired, slightly sunburnt, and starving. The place had an old wooden sign that just said diner in faded red letters. No name, no neon. It was nestled off a long exit ramp that seemed like it had been there forever, but when we looked back later, none of us could agree on how we even found it. The GPS glitched as we pulled in, froze, then rebooted. Inside, it was cooler than we expected. Dusty light filtered through half-drawn blinds. The waitress didn't say much. No smile, no attitude. Just poured us water and waited. The menu was one page, no branding, just black text. Everything tasted fine, familiar even, like the kind of food you'd eat at your grandmother's house if your grandmother still used canned gravy and overcooked eggs. We joked about how generic the place was, like someone had tried to recreate a small-town diner from memory, but had missed the details. The music playing from an old radio wasn't static, but it wasn't clear either. Something tinny and old, maybe a war-era broadcast. No one could place it. When we paid, the receipt was strange. At first glance, nothing unusual, but then I noticed no logo, no tax info, no address, just one word, typed dead center in courier font. Paid. That was it. We laughed about it in the car. Kept the receipt as a souvenir. It was too weird not to. I slipped it into the glove box and we got back on the road. The plan was to drive a few more hours, crash in Flagstaff, then start heading home the next day. But that night, in the motel, I tried to look up the diner. Not just to verify it, and I wanted to show it on the map, retrace the route. But nothing came up. Not under diners near X, not under road exits. Even when I scanned the road view feature on satellite maps, the entire section of highway where we had supposedly exited looked uninterrupted. No ramps, no forks, no side roads, just one long, unbroken stretch of highway. At first, I figured I had the location wrong. The desert tends to blend together after a while, but my friend Mark swore he remembered the exit sign, said it was exit 188. When we looked it up, exit 188 was miles away from where we were, on a completely different road. That's when it got unsettling. The next morning, I opened the glove box and pulled out the receipt again. Still blank, still just paid. But the paper felt different, like it had dried out overnight. Brittle. The kind of texture you only feel on old thermal paper after years in a drawer. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it didn't feel like something printed yesterday. Later that day, we started arguing about what the waitress looked like. Mark said she had short, grey hair. Jenna swore it was long and black. I remembered her wearing glasses, thick with a green tint. Mark said she didn't even speak to us. I remembered her asking if we were making good time. Jenna said she asked about our shoes. All three of us remembered the food the same, though. Bland, soft, comforting. Too comforting. That's the part I keep coming back to. How comfortable we all felt there, despite how weird it was. Like we weren't supposed to question it. Some experiences don't disappear. They erase their own context. That diner didn't vanish. It just stopped being verifiable. I still have the receipt. It's in a box now somewhere in my storage unit. When I look at it, I don't see anything unusual, but I don't touch it anymore. It makes my hands feel cold. A few days after we'd left Arizona and were already back in Texas, something else started happening. The car started to smell like coffee. At first, it was faint. Like someone had opened a thermos for a second and closed it again. It was strongest in the mornings. I asked Mark if he'd spilled something. He was riding shotgun for most of the trip. He swore he hadn't had coffee since that weird diner stop. Jenna said the same. The smell intensified gradually. By the time we reached Austin, it was unmistakable. Fresh, hot coffee. But there were no cups, no spills. We tore the car apart. Glove box, trunk, under the seats. Nothing. I thought maybe we were just imagining it. Suggestible, hyper-aware after the diner thing. But then Jenna's dog, a rescue mutt she'd brought along for part of the trip, started whining when we'd get into the car. She'd paw at the passenger seat, then try to climb into the back, almost like she was avoiding something. Jenna joked that maybe the car was haunted. Mark didn't laugh. We took the car to a detailer, paid extra for a deep clean. The guy who worked on it said there was no sign of any spills, no residue in the carpets or upholstery. He even commented that the interior smelled almost too clean, like it had been chemically stripped. And yet, the smell of coffee persisted. Not burnt, not old, fresh. That was when I started checking the mileage. I knew we'd logged the distances for gas reimbursement. But when I pulled out the notebook where we'd been writing down tank stops and odometer readings, there was a line I didn't recognize. A short entry written in someone else's handwriting. Fuel stop, 2 gallons, paid cash. It didn't say where or when, just a time, 3:27 a.m. I called Mark, asked if he'd written it. He said no. Jenna said it wasn't hers either. I took a photo and sent it to them. Mark replied almost immediately, "That's not my writing, looks older." I still don't know how it got there. It's written in cursive, slightly slanted, the way receipts from the 60s looked. But we hadn't stopped for gas at 3:27 a.m. anywhere. We were asleep in the motel at that time. There's something deeply unsettling about being unable to verify your own movements, like realizing you've lost a few frames of your own memory and someone else filmed over them. The coffee smell stayed in the car for weeks. I eventually sold the car, months later, and when the guy came to test drive it, the first thing he said was, "Smells like someone just made a fresh pot." I didn't tell him anything, just handed him the keys and watched him drive away. It was Mark who brought it up. We were sitting in his garage one night, months after the trip, drinking beer and trying to rationalize it all. He had gone down some internet rabbit hole, reading about phantom towns, places that show up on only one side of a journey. Roadside stops, gas stations, restrooms, things built into highways but never seen twice. Some people call it a symptom of sleep deprivation. Others say it's a psychological artifact, a way the brain protects itself from something it can't comprehend. Places that exist only long enough to interact with you, then vanish. We laughed about it, but not really. What made our case different was the receipt we found later. Mark was the one who spotted it, tucked under the windshield wiper one rainy morning. He assumed it was junk mail or a parking notice, pulled it out, looked at it, and froze. It was a receipt. Same paper, same type, courier font, just one word again, paid. But this one had a date, tomorrow's date. The timestamp was for 5:04 a.m. None of us knew what to do. Mark texted me a photo. I drove over to his house immediately. We stared at it together. The edges of the paper were dry, crisp, like it had just been printed, not weathered, not old. We waited. At 5:04 a.m. the next morning, Mark's car alarm went off in his driveway. He ran out. Nothing was there. No broken window, no footprints, just the receipt still on the table inside. I remember standing in his kitchen, watching the sun come up. Everything was silent, still, but the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee. None of us sleep well anymore. Sometimes I think it was just a glitch, a trick of memory and exhaustion. But then I'll be driving on a back road and the radio will crackle and I'll think about that diner, about that exit that was there when we needed it and gone when we tried to find it again. And the worst part is I keep wondering, what if we hadn't left when we did? What if we had stayed for just one more cup? Story 2. The car that followed without lights for over 200 miles. This happened to me in the fall of 2018. I was driving from Billings, Montana to Spokane, Washington to visit my brother. I'd left late, around 9:30 p.m., thinking I'd just push through the night and get there by sunrise. I've always preferred night driving. Fewer cars, less noise, easier to think. The interstate cuts clean across northern Montana, all dark sky and tree-lined shoulders. You could drive for an hour without seeing another headlight. I stopped for gas just outside of Missoula. Last chance to fill up before a long empty stretch. I remember buying a bottle of water and a stale sandwich. The guy behind the counter didn't say much, just rang me up and nodded once. It wasn't until I pulled back onto the highway that I noticed the car behind me. At first, I thought it was just someone leaving the station at the same time. No big deal. But the headlights were off, totally off. I didn't catch it right away. They were just barely visible, two dim glints in my rearview mirror. I thought maybe their lights were broken. But when I slowed down a little, they slowed down too. I sped up. They matched it exactly. They kept that exact distance, not tailgating, not backing off, just hovering about 6 or 7 car lengths behind me. No turn signals, no high beams, no acceleration, just there. I checked my side mirrors, tried to make out the shape of the car, but it was too dark. No overhead lights on that stretch of highway. Just the stars above and the reflective paint lines flashing by. The car, whatever it was, didn't look big. No roof rack, no antennas, just a smooth outline. A black shape with no signature, no color, no defining features. I remember telling myself not to overthink it, that it was late, that I was tired, that the guy probably didn't even know his lights were off, but something about the way he moved, it didn't feel like distraction. It felt intentional. Every mile the unease grew, because the car never passed me, never fell back, never flashed its lights, never tried to communicate in any way. It just followed. I tried switching lanes. It followed. I tried speeding up suddenly, even took an exit ramp and looped back to see if it would keep going. It didn't. It exited too. That's when my chest started to tighten, because exits out there are rare, spread far apart. There was no reason for someone to follow me off, especially at random. I got back onto the highway quickly, heart pounding, watching the rear view. Within seconds, the car reappeared behind me, still no lights, still holding the exact same distance. That pattern lasted over 2 hours. No deviation, no movement. I passed highway patrol at one point. A car sitting in the median with its lights off. I slowed, thinking maybe they'd flag the guy, but nothing happened. The shadow car didn't slow, didn't swerve, just rolled past like smoke on wheels. At one point I flashed my brights at them, tapped my brakes. Nothing. They stayed just far enough back that I couldn't see a face or plate, just that shape, that void following me, perfectly centered in the mirror. Not gaining, not backing off, not real, but too real. I pulled off at a rest stop eventually. Small one, no lights, no vending machines, just a bathroom and 3 picnic tables under a rusted metal awning. I waited. The car didn't follow. It rolled past without slowing. I watched it disappear into the dark. No brake lights, no red glow, just gone. I waited longer than I needed to, maybe 20 minutes. When I got back on the highway, I drove slower, listened to the silence, nothing behind me. For the first time in hours, I felt like I was alone. That lasted maybe 45 minutes. Then just past the Idaho border, I saw it again. Same distance, same pace, no lights, just there. At that point, it didn't feel like someone was following me. It felt like something had attached itself, like a shadow with mass. I waited as long as I could before calling 911. I didn't want to sound paranoid, or worse, delusional. But when I crossed into Washington and the car was still behind me, still without lights, still never changing its distance, I couldn't take it anymore. It was 3:17 a.m. when I called. I pulled off into a gas station in a small town just outside of Spokane. It was closed, but the lot was lit, and I needed to be somewhere visible, somewhere I could watch my back. I put the car in park and hit dial. The operator picked up fast. 911, what's your emergency? I gave her my name, my location, then started explaining. slowly, carefully. I didn't want to come across unstable. I described the car behind me, how long it had followed, how it had no lights, never passed, never braked, how it mimicked every exit, every turn. There was a pause after I finished. Not static, just silence. Then the operator said, "You're not the first." I didn't understand at first. "Excuse me?" I asked. She repeated it, slower. "You're not the first to call about it." I sat in silence. The hairs on my arms stood up. "So you've had reports?" "Not official ones," she said. "Nothing filed, but you're not the first." "What does that mean?" I asked. Another pause, then, "Sometimes people see a car, no lights, follows them for miles, never stops, never seen again." I could hear her shifting in her chair, typing something maybe. Then she asked for a description. I gave it, best I could. She asked for a plate. I said there wasn't one, at least not one I could see. She didn't sound surprised. That scared me more than anything. "Do I need to stay here?" I asked. Another pause. "No," she said. "It's already gone." I looked around. She was right, the lot was empty. I scanned the highway, nothing, no headlights, no cars pulling in. It had vanished again, just like at the rest stop. I asked her if anyone had ever figured out what it was, or who. She just said, "We stopped logging the calls after the fifth one. That was it. No police report, no follow-up, just a quiet end to a quiet conversation." I thanked her. She didn't say anything else, just hung up. When I started the car again, I sat there for a long time, watching the empty lot, the quiet road. Then I drove off, windows down, eyes darting constantly to the mirrors. I didn't see the car again. Not until I got back home. Back home, I couldn't shake it. I told myself I'd been tired, stressed, seeing patterns where none existed, but part of me needed to know if anyone else had really seen it. I started looking online. At first, nothing. But then I started using keywords instead of stories. Car with no lights. Followed on highway. Vanished vehicle. Slowly, threads started to appear. Most were vague, comments buried deep in forums, mentions of cars that followed too long. Some dismissed them. Others asked if the follower ever turned off. They never did. There was one post from 2016 on a regional subreddit. A trucker said a black sedan with no plates followed him from Coeur d'Alene to Ellensburg. Same behavior. No lights, no brakes, no pass. When he pulled off, it drove past. When he got back on, it returned. The post had one reply. "Mine followed me to the ramp, last one before Seattle, never came back." That detail stuck with me. The exit ramp. Because mine had followed until the ramp before Spokane. Then vanished. No traffic camera caught it. I checked, made a public records request, nothing on surveillance. My own dash cam. Most of the footage was corrupted, except one segment. It was from 3:58 a.m., the timestamp just before I'd entered Spokane. It was short, only 12 seconds long. It didn't show the road or my face. It was footage from the back seat of me talking, but I was alone in the car. There was no camera facing that direction, no rear lens, no phone mounted back there. But the video showed me clearly, looking ahead, hands on the wheel, and speaking. Just one sentence, low, almost a whisper. "She's almost caught up." I don't remember saying that. I don't remember recording it. And when I showed it to a friend, just once, he went quiet, asked if it was a prank. I deleted the clip the same night. I've taken that highway again once, daytime, full sun, no music, no distractions. I didn't see the car. But sometimes, when I'm merging onto an empty road, I'll check the mirror, just in case. And once, just once, I thought I saw it, not the shape, but the absence. The mirror went black, just for a second, like something had passed behind me that didn't reflect. Maybe it's just a trick of light, maybe. But I still leave my dome light on when I drive at night. Not for me, for the back seat. Story 3. The motel that didn't exist the next morning. This happened in the winter of 2020. My friend Caleb and I were driving from Reno to Salt Lake City for a job interview he had lined up. It was a long, cold stretch of highway, mostly uneventful desert and snow-slicked roads. We took turns driving, stopping only to refuel and stretch our legs. The plan was to make it in one night, but the storm that swept through central Nevada forced us to pull off earlier than planned. It was around 11:40 p.m. when we spotted the motel. There were no signs leading to it, just a sudden turn-off on a service road that curved behind a small line of pines. We hadn't seen trees in hours. The building itself was single-story, flat-roofed, and shaped like an L. Only a few windows were lit. The red vacancy sign flickered, humming faintly in the cold. We looked at each other. Neither of us remembered passing anything nearby. No gas stations, no roadside stores. The snow was coming down hard now. Visibility had dropped to maybe 20 feet. We pulled in. The lot was almost empty. Just one old sedan near the far end. Its windshield was frosted like it hadn't moved in days. Inside, the front desk was behind glass. There was a bell. Caleb rang it. A man appeared from a side door almost instantly. Middle-aged, wire-frame glasses, yellowed sweater. Said his name was Warren. He didn't ask for ID, just cash. $45 for the night. Caleb handed over 2 20s and a 10. Warren gave us a key, old-fashioned, brass, attached to a cracked oval-shaped tag, room 3. The room was off, not dirty, not wrong, but not right either. Like a film set built to look like a motel room without anyone knowing what a real one looked like. The carpet was thin, grey. The lampshade tilted slightly. The bedspread was stiff and didn't move naturally. The TV hummed softly, even when it was off. Neither of us remembered turning in for the night. One minute we were flipping through channels, making dumb jokes about how liminal the place felt. And the next, we were dreaming. At least, we think it was a dream. Both of us were in a hallway. Narrow, yellow light above. No windows, just door after door, identical and numbered. Room 1, room 2, room 3. Then room 3 again, room 3 again. No matter how far we walked, room 3 kept showing up. I remember touching the doorknob in the dream. It was warm. Not hot, warm like someone had just touched it from the other side. When I opened it, I didn't see another room. I saw a road, not like a picture of one, like I'd opened a door directly onto a highway. White lines passing fast under dim headlights, no sound, just the flicker of motion and blackness beyond it. Caleb remembers something similar, but in his dream, the hallway never turned, just kept going forward. He said he opened a door marked room 3 and saw a stretch of desert with red lights blinking in the sky. Wind turbines, dozens of them, but they weren't spinning. When we woke up, the light in the room was different, not natural morning light, fluorescent. The curtains didn't move, even when we pulled them. The window didn't show anything, just grey. We didn't say anything right away. We just packed our bags and walked out. Warren wasn't at the desk. The lobby was empty. There was no bell this time, no sound. We left the key on the counter and stepped outside. The lot was full of snow, but there were no tire tracks. Not from us, not from anyone. The sedan was gone. I don't remember seeing it leave. When we got back on the highway, it took us 3 tries to find our route again. The GPS wouldn't update. Every road looked unfamiliar. Only when we reached the main interstate did the location snap back into place. But even then, we couldn't find that motel on the map. Later that day, I asked Caleb about the dream. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "I didn't tell you what I dreamed yet." He described the hallway. The door marked room 3. We'd both seen it, exactly the same way. Dreams don't synchronize like that, unless they weren't dreams. We got to Salt Lake late. Caleb's interview went fine, but he didn't seem present. He kept rubbing his fingers against the inside of his coat pocket, like something was bothering him. I thought he was nervous. The next morning, we were packing up our motel room when he froze. Then he pulled something out of his jacket. It was the key. The brass key to room 3, still attached to the cracked plastic tag. He stared at it for a long time, didn't say anything, just sat on the edge of the bed holding it in both hands like it might disintegrate. I took it from him and felt the weight, cold, heavier than it looked. "Did you forget to leave it?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "I left it on the desk." We both remembered that, clear as day, but now it was here. Rust had started forming around the edges. The number 3 stamped into the tag looked deeper, as if it had been etched again, harder. I put it in my backpack, thought maybe we could figure it out later. We tried to find the motel again on our way back. Nothing. We traced the same stretch of highway, watched for the turnoff, checked our mileage, our timestamps. We even marked spots on the GPS and stopped every 5 or 10 miles. There were gas stations, one rest stop, no trees, no L-shaped building, no Warren. When I pulled out the key again at a rest area, it felt warmer, like it had been in sunlight, but it hadn't, not even close. Caleb started having dreams again after that, always the same. The hallway, the doors, room 3. He said sometimes in the dream the door was open when he got there, and there was someone inside, someone just out of frame, breathing. Once he called me at 2:43 a.m., whispered the door was open again. I hadn't even been asleep. I'd been staring at the key in my apartment. I didn't remember taking it out of my bag. We started looking into the area. Forums, Reddit threads, local legends, nothing substantial, just vague mentions of a lost stop along Route 93. An old mining town that vanished. A place that used to house highway workers in the 1940s but had no modern records. I called the Nevada Department of Transportation, asked if there had ever been a motel near mile marker 247. The guy on the line was quiet for a second, then said, "That road's been straight shot for years. Closest place to sleep's 40 miles west." I asked if anything used to be there. He said, "Not that I've seen." Then added, "But a lot of people think they've stopped there." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer, just hung up. I don't think he was lying. I think he just didn't want to explain what he meant. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my bank. They flagged a charge on my credit card, small one, $45, from a place labeled Western Valley Inn. I didn't recognize the name. I checked the transaction. It was dated 3 days prior. The location, Davenport, Nebraska. I've never been to Nebraska. I asked the representative to confirm the address. She read it out slowly. 222 Lincoln Street. No phone number, just the charge and the location. I looked it up. There is no Western Valley Inn in Davenport. There's barely anything there at all. But when I looked at the satellite view, my stomach dropped. At the end of Lincoln Street was an L-shaped building, low, flat-roofed, half covered by trees. I called Caleb, told him what happened. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Check your backpack." I did. The key was gone. I hadn't touched it since I moved it to a drawer. The drawer was empty. Not just of the key. The whole drawer was empty. Every item I had in there, flashlight, receipts, gloves, all gone. Caleb said he had another dream the night before. This time the hallway ended. The door to room 3 opened onto a parking lot. Only one car. His own. He walked up to it in the dream and looked through the window. Something was in the passenger seat, but when he tried to open the door, he woke up. The next morning, there was mud on the driver's side floor mat and a rust stain on the passenger seat. We started reading about displacement phenomena, weird spots in liminal areas, towns that don't exist, buildings that appear only to certain people. Most of them are dismissed as hallucinations, theories about sleep deprivation, road fatigue, shared delusion. But some go further. Accounts from soldiers in war zones, drivers who crashed and survived. They talk about buildings that shouldn't be there, people who aren't really people. Rest stops that vanish, all tied to unresolved trauma, places where something was supposed to happen but didn't. Places that remember, that stay in the periphery, waiting for someone to look directly at them. There's a term some researchers use, root-adjacent trauma structures, a fancy name for buildings that shouldn't exist, but do, only for certain people, only under certain conditions. But none of them explain how a charge gets placed on a card, or why my name was on the receipt Caleb found in his mailbox days later. He called me at night, voice shaking, said he'd opened the envelope and inside was a folded piece of thermal paper. Room 3, date 2 days in the future. My name printed at the top. He didn't open the door to his apartment that night. Slept in his car instead. I don't know what to do with any of this. I've moved twice since then. Changed cards, changed cities. But once a month, exactly on the 17th, I get a notification. You've been charged $45 at Western Valley Inn. Always for room 3, always the same timestamp. And when I check my front door the next morning, there's no key. Just the faint smell of bleach. And sometimes, if I listen closely enough, the sound of a TV turned low coming from the next room.